Sagittarius. You died in 2020, but God gave you a second chance. Find out why. Sagittarius, do you remember that strange stillness of 2020, when the world seemed to stop spinning, and something deep within you went silent too? It wasn't just a year of global pause. It was the year your old self quietly died. Not the adventurous spirit who seeks new horizons, but the identity built on motion, discovery, noise, and validation. For the first time in your life, you couldn't run from yourself. The open road, the conversations, the purpose, all vanished. And there you were, stripped of direction, staring into the unknown. At first, you tried to fill the silence, through connection, distraction, or inspiration, but nothing landed. The universe wasn't asking you to act. It was asking you to surrender. That year, Sagittarius, you faced a sacred ending. The one you had been, the restless, ever-searching soul who needed the world to reflect your worth, dissolved. And in that dissolution, God began writing your resurrection story. Because the death you lived through in 2020 was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to rebirth you into truth. A version of yourself untethered from external meaning, rooted instead in divine authenticity. The archer who once sought answers in the distance finally turned the arrow inward and found heaven waiting in the quiet of their own soul. If this message finds you in that space between endings and beginnings, like, share, and subscribe. Not for me, but to honor the new life your spirit is already stepping into. Gate 1: The Sacred Death of Sagittarius. The collapse that set you free. Sagittarius, there comes a moment in every seeker's life when the search itself must die. 2020 was that moment for you. The year the compass broke, the map burned, and every road you'd relied on suddenly ended in silence. For years your identity was woven into motion, in exploring, teaching, creating, inspiring. You were known as the one who knew, the one who could always make sense of chaos through truth and optimism. But when the world stopped, your wings were clipped. And with that stillness came something far deeper than boredom, a slow spiritual death. It wasn't just the loss of routine. It was the loss of reflection, the mirror of other people's admiration, the echo of laughter, the satisfaction of purpose gone. You who had always measured your aliveness through movement and connection, suddenly faced the unthinkable. Yourself without performance, without direction, without witness. The external flame that once defined you went out, and in that darkness you met the part of yourself you'd long avoided. The one who didn't know what to do when there was nowhere to go. And that, Sagittarius, was the beginning of your resurrection. Because 2020 didn't just take your freedom. It stripped away the illusion that freedom ever depended on circumstances. It revealed that your true liberation could only come from within. Not from boarding planes, chasing dreams, or sharing wisdom, but from sitting in silence and discovering that even stripped bare, your spirit still radiates truth. The version of you that died wasn't your soul. It was the persona built on endless motion. It was the wanderer who mistook movement for growth, expansion for fulfillment, and applause for love. You see, before 2020, you had mastered survival through exploration. You found meaning in new experiences, validation in curiosity, and joy in motion. But deep inside, there was always a quiet voice saying, "When the road ends, who will I be?" That year, the universe answered that question by taking away everything you used to define yourself. It was a mercy disguised as loss. Many Sagittarians tried to resist that inner death. They filled the stillness with digital noise, tried to recreate movement online, to perform inspiration through the screen. But the energy never came back the same way, did it? Because what God was doing was not outside of you, it was inside. He wasn't asking you to entertain the world. He was inviting you to rediscover your own essence. For early-born Sagittarians, those last days of November and first breaths of December, the loss came through work. The titles, the recognition, the momentum of career suddenly meant nothing. You realized how fragile the identity built on achievement was. For mid-December Sagittarians, the collapse came through relationships. Distance, separation, and silence exposed how dependent you had become on others to feel worthy. And for those born in the final days of the sign, late December, the destruction came through your own image, the grand narrative you'd written about who you were. The wise teacher, the light for others, the eternal optimist. And yet, in 2020, even you couldn't save yourself from despair. But that was the point. God didn't take away your stage to punish you. He dimmed the lights so that you could see your own glow in the dark. You were never meant to live through others' eyes. The audience had to vanish so that you could witness your own rebirth. In that isolation, something holy happened. You began to feel again. Not the high of excitement, but the quiet pulse of existence. You noticed the morning light differently, the silence between songs, the rhythm of your breath. You realized that life wasn't something to be chased. It was something to be inhabited. For the first time, you met your soul without translation, without destination, without disguise. This was the true purpose of that year, the forced retreat from everything you thought you needed so you could meet the part of yourself that could never be taken. The Sagittarius who survived 2020 is not the same being who entered it. That old version died, gloriously, completely, and necessarily. Because you can't expand endlessly outward without first discovering your center. And in that dark cocoon, the divine whispered, "Your worth was never in what you do, but in what you are." You didn't just survive 2020. You were resurrected through it. Every tear shed in isolation was a baptism. Every quiet night was a seed of new wisdom. Every day spent without validation was a reclamation of your truth. Sagittarius, what you experienced was ego death, the disintegration of the illusion that your brilliance needs an audience to exist. You were not abandoned, you were being initiated. The same energy that once made you restless became the energy that now makes you radiant in stillness. The very thing you feared, losing your identity, became the portal through which you met your soul. So look back now, not with bitterness but with awe. Because the year that felt like the end was actually your beginning. The world stopped so you could finally see that you were never running out of time, you were just being called to come home. Gate 2, the rebirth of Sagittarius. The awakening of true light. Sagittarius, you didn't come back from that dark season as the same being who entered it. The one who rose from the ashes of 2020 is quieter, deeper, infinitely more authentic. Before, you sought meaning through movement, purpose through action, love through recognition. Now you've begun to understand that the truest form of expansion isn't outward, it's inward. It's the widening of your inner sky, not the distance you travel through the world. This rebirth wasn't soft. It was carved through loneliness, uncertainty, and the painful realization that much of what you thought was you was actually what others projected onto you. The teacher, the traveler, the optimistic warrior, all of those were true but partial. Beneath them was a soul aching to rest, to belong to itself, to simply be. When everything you clung to fell away, the silence that remained wasn't empty. It was full of presence. You began hearing something you had ignored for years, your own truth speaking without noise. It told you that you are not your achievements, your following, or your dreams. You are the consciousness behind them, the eternal spark that cannot be cancelled, confined, or controlled. Rebirth isn't dramatic, Sagittarius. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or applause. It unfolds slowly like dawn through fog. First, it feels uncertain. You question whether you've lost your fire. You wonder if the old passion will ever return. But what's actually happening is that your flame is changing form. It's becoming steady, consistent, self-fueled. No longer dependent on external winds to keep burning. You no longer need others to ignite you. You generate light from within. And this new light, oh Sagittarius, it's softer but far stronger. Before 2020, you burned fast and wide. You illuminated others, yes, but sometimes at the cost of your own balance. You shone so brightly that you exhausted yourself, mistaking external brightness for inner fulfillment. But the universe took you into the dark so that you could learn the art of glowing instead of blazing. Glowing doesn't demand attention. It radiates quietly. It warms without burning. It attracts without trying. Let's be honest. The solitude of that time broke parts of you didn't know existed. You had to face insecurities you'd hidden under confidence. You had to admit that sometimes your search for truth was a way to avoid stillness, that your independence was also a shield against intimacy. When the world stopped, all your philosophical frameworks collapsed, and what remained was raw humanity. You stripped of labels, opinions, and armor. And that's where God met you. Not in achievement but in surrender. Not in motion but in stillness. Not in brilliance but in vulnerability. You learned that faith isn't knowing where you're going. It's trusting that the next step will appear under your feet. You learned that freedom isn't the absence of boundaries. It's the presence of self-awareness. You learned that purpose isn't something to chase. It's something you naturally express when you live truthfully. For the first time, you started listening differently, not to the world but to your soul. You began noticing the subtle synchronicities. Songs that spoke directly to your spirit, strangers whose words felt divinely timed, moments of déjà vu that reminded you that life was guiding you, not punishing you. That awareness was your rebirth. The old Sagittarius lived by sight. The reborn Sagittarius lives by vision. Your rebirth also redefined love. You once sought love in intensity, the thrill, the pursuit, the fire of connection. But now love has become quieter, more sacred. It's no longer about being seen. It's about being understood. You crave souls who speak the same language of stillness, who don't need to fill silence to feel close, who understand that love is freedom, not possession. This shift in your heart is proof that you've healed more than you realize. And let's talk about purpose, because that's the heartbeat of Sagittarius. Before 2020, your sense of purpose was tied to doing, to teaching, traveling, creating, sharing. Now it's tied to being, to embodying wisdom rather than just speaking it. You've become a living philosophy. Every choice you make, every boundary you honor, every moment you choose peace over pride. These are your teachings now. People no longer follow your words. They feel your energy. And that energy has become your legacy. There's a reason God gave you a second chance. He saw that the old life, no matter how successful, was too small for your spirit. You had built a castle made of applause, beautiful but fragile. The storm came to show you that truth cannot be built on validation, can only be built on presence. And once that foundation formed inside you, the divine began to rebuild everything else around it. Look closely at your life now. Do you notice how the right people are finding you without effort? How the opportunities that match your new vibration seem to appear naturally? That's not coincidence, it's consequence. When you realign with authenticity, everything that belongs to you begins to seek you. You've entered the magnetic phase of your purpose, where your only job is to stay aligned, not to chase. Sagittarius, your rebirth is quiet, but it is powerful. The old fire burned to be seen. The new one burns to serve. The old light dazzled, the new one heals. You've gone from performer to guide, from wanderer to witness, from philosopher to embodiment. This is what true resurrection looks like. Not the return of what was, but the arrival of what was always meant to be. So honor yourself. You survived an initiation that many souls resist. You let your identity die, and you found your soul waiting beneath the ashes. That's not just rebirth. That's enlightenment in motion. Gate 3, the mission of the reborn Sagittarius. The purpose behind your second chance. Sagittarius, when God gives a second chance, He never sends you back to the same life. The universe does not resurrect what's finished. It reassigns what's eternal. That's what happened to you after 2020. You didn't return to who you were. You emerged as who you were always meant to be. And with that rebirth came a calling that can no longer be ignored. You see, your second chance wasn't given randomly. It came because there's a message that only you can deliver. A truth that only your scars can speak. A light that can only shine through the cracks of what broke you. Before 2020, you shared wisdom from intellect. Now, you share from experience. You've lived what many only read about. Death of ego, rebirth of soul. And that gives your voice divine weight. When you speak now, Sagittarius, it's not to be admired. It's to awaken. There was a time when you believed purpose had to be grand, the stage, the recognition, the applause. But your rebirth taught you that the most sacred missions often unfold quietly, through everyday compassion, through the ways you hold space for others, through the moments you choose authenticity over image. God didn't resurrect you to perform again. He brought you back to serve through example, through truth, through presence. The pain you endured in isolation became the sacred language through which you now translate healing for others. The very nights when you thought you had lost your spark were actually nights when He was planting it deeper, where no wind, no doubt, no circumstance could ever extinguish it again. This is why you're different now. You no longer burn for attention. You burn for purpose. Your fire no longer spreads recklessly. It illuminates deliberately. Let's speak honestly. Before 2020, much of your ambition was reactive. You chased success to prove something, that you were valuable, worthy, enough. That's not judgment. That's human nature. But the Sagittarius who stands here now doesn't need to prove anything. Your existence itself is proof. The fact that you survived the internal extinction of your old identity, means your soul was chosen for something greater. Your second chance is not about rebuilding old dreams. It's about building a new world within you and around you. Many Sagittarians are awakening now to a higher calling, one that blends their old fire with newfound humility. Teachers are becoming healers. Artists are becoming spiritual storytellers. Leaders are becoming guides who lead not from authority but from empathy. This shift isn't coincidence. It's divine orchestration. 2020 prepared a generation of Sagittarius souls who would embody wisdom in its truest form, not as philosophy, but as living testimony. Remember the you who once needed the world to see you. That version is gone. The new you doesn't chase visibility because light doesn't chase darkness. It simply shines. When you walk into a room now, people feel something different. It's not charisma, it's clarity. It's not performance, it's peace. You've become a vessel for presence itself. This is why certain people and environments have fallen away since your rebirth. They were calibrated to the frequency of your old self, the one who gave endlessly to be loved, who shone constantly to feel seen. But now your vibration has changed. You no longer resonate with chaos. You don't crave validation. You crave meaning. You crave truth. You crave the kind of connection that mirrors your soul, not your image. And that's the essence of your mission now, to live so truthfully that your very presence becomes permission for others to do the same. To speak with such authenticity that your words echo like medicine. To walk with such humility that your leadership feels like love, not control. That's what the divine needed to birth through you. A new model of strength. The Sagittarius of the old world inspired by conquering. The Sagittarius of the new world inspires by embodying. You're no longer a preacher. You're a presence. No longer a chaser, you're a channel. And because of that, everything you touch will begin to transform. Look around. Haven't you noticed how people now confide in you differently? How strangers sense your calm and feel safe in it? How opportunities aligned with service and healing have started appearing? This isn't luck. It's resonance. The universe rearranges itself around those who align with their divine assignment. And Sagittarius, your assignment is to illuminate without ego, to teach through love, to lead through truth. You were reborn to remind others that freedom isn't found in running. It's found in returning. Returning to self. Returning to spirit. Returning to that unbreakable bond between you and the source that created you. The fire that once scattered you now roots you. The wisdom that once lived in your words now lives in your energy. Understand this. You are not the same light you were before. You've gone from sunlight to starlight, no longer dependent on proximity to shine, no longer fading when unseen. You illuminate from within, silently and constantly. And those who are meant to find you will, even in the darkest night, because divine light is magnetic. So don't waste your second chance trying to revive what's already served its purpose. Don't return to shallow pursuits disguised as success. Don't rebuild the old stage when you were reborn to build a sanctuary. The new mission doesn't need applause. It needs alignment. It needs you to keep walking your truth quietly, consistently, reverently. The world may not fully understand this new version of you yet. That's fine. The universe does. It's already opening paths you can't see, bringing the right people to your door, placing your name in rooms your feet haven't entered. Because divine timing follows divine readiness. And after 2020 Sagittarius, you are ready. You died to illusion so that you could live in purpose. You were stripped of identity so that you could be clothed in truth. You were silenced so that when you finally spoke again, your words would carry the vibration of heaven itself. This is your mission now, to live as living proof that death, even of the ego, is never the end. It is the beginning of everything real. Gate for the integration, living as the reborn Sagittarius. Sagittarius, resurrection isn't complete until it's lived. You didn't walk through the fire to tell stories about it. You walked through to become the fire, purified, steady, luminous. The new life you're living now isn't about constant transformation. It's about integration. Weaving everything you've learned into the rhythm of everyday being. God didn't give you this second chance so you could go back to surviving. He gave it to you so you could create, lead, serve, and rest in divine flow. The biggest misconception about second chances is that they look like a comeback. But yours isn't about returning. It's about arriving. You're not who you were before 2020, and you're not meant to be. That Sagittarius lived on momentum. This Sagittarius lives on meaning. That one performed confidence. This one breathes serenity. That one was admired. This one is anchored. You now understand that true leadership begins with self-governance. Before, your power came from projection, the way people saw you, the way you moved them, the way your energy filled every space. Now your power comes from presence. You no longer need to fill rooms. You transform them simply by entering. People sense the quiet certainty that you carry, the aura of someone who's been to the edge of themselves and returned with peace. You no longer need to prove anything. You simply are. And yet, the world around you still moves at frantic speed, still worships the old definitions of success. Some will not understand this new rhythm of yours, the way you protect your peace, the way you choose depth over display, the way you walk away from noise without explanation. They'll mistake your calm for detachment, your silence for distance. But you know what they don't. Stillness is not emptiness. It's sacred containment. When you move now, you do it intentionally. You choose projects that align with your soul, not your ego. You keep company with people who feed your spirit, not your insecurities. You allow yourself to rest, to pause, to listen. You've realized that progress without presence is just performance. Your life now flows like a river, not rushing to impress, but steadily carving truth into every landscape it touches. This integration also changes how you love. The reborn Sagittarius no longer needs passion that consumes. You seek connection that grounds, love that breathes, not burns. You value honesty over chemistry, growth over drama, peace over performance. You've learned that love isn't meant to complete you. It's meant to meet you. And the only way to attract that level of love is to remain fully in your truth, even when it means walking alone for a while. You're also learning that solitude is not loneliness. You don't retreat from people because you're hurt. You retreat because your energy has become sacred space. You've learned to discern who gets access. Not everyone who applauds deserves a seat. Not everyone who listens deserves your secrets. This boundary isn't arrogance, it's self-respect. You guard your energy not from fear, but from reverence. The new Sagittarius is a builder of light. You no longer crave grand moments to feel alive. You find divinity in small details. Morning sunlight across your coffee, laughter shared without agenda. The sound of rain reminding you that life continues in cycles, just as you did. You understand now that joy doesn't shout. It hums. Peace doesn't arrive. It's remembered. And you lead differently too. Before, leadership meant being the loudest. Now it means being the clearest. You guide others not by standing above them, but by walking beside them. You no longer teach from intellect alone, you teach from integration. You don't offer theories, you offer embodiment. You don't need followers, you create fellow travelers. This is spiritual maturity, influence without ego, guidance without control. The old you sought applause. The new you attracts alignment. The old you lit fires. The new you sustains light. And this is how your second chance becomes eternal. By allowing your transformation to become someone else's inspiration. Every time you live from authenticity, you unconsciously grant permission for others to do the same. Every time you choose peace over pride, you ripple that frequency across countless unseen hearts. This is divine service, not through preaching but through being. There will still be moments when your old patterns whisper. They'll tempt you to rush, to explain, to prove. Smile when they do. It only means you're aware. Awareness itself is proof of evolution. Each time you catch yourself before falling into old flames, you reinforce your new foundation. Growth doesn't mean never slipping. It means never forgetting who you are. Even when you do. Sagittarius, this is the era of your true freedom. The freedom not to escape but to remain. The freedom to feel everything without drowning in it. The freedom to express without needing applause. The freedom to rest without guilt. The freedom to love without losing yourself. That's what God was preparing you for all along. Not a perfect life, but a peaceful soul within an imperfect world. So as you walk forward, don't search for meaning, become it. Don't chase destiny, embody it. Let every sunrise remind you that you didn't just survive 2020. You were chosen to live differently because of it. You are no longer a wanderer chasing truth. You are the living truth in motion. And when others ask what happened to you, tell them the simplest thing of all. I died in 2020, but God gave me a second chance, not to be who I was, but to become who I was always meant to be. Conclusion: the quiet resurrection and the promise of the second chance. Sagittarius, you are no longer standing in the ashes of who you were. You are standing on sacred ground built from everything you've survived. The death that 2020 brought was never meant to end you. It was designed to strip away illusion until only truth remained. You, who once looked to the horizon for meaning, finally discovered that the greatest adventure was never out there. It was always within. You have journeyed through the collapse of certainty, the silence of isolation, the ache of ego death, and on the other side you found peace that cannot be taken. You are now living proof that endings are not loss. They are invitations. What you thought was a breaking was actually a birthing. What felt like being buried was, in truth, being planted. And the life that is growing from that soil is one of divine purpose, deeper love, and effortless authenticity. You no longer shine because people see you. You shine because you remember who you are. So when you look back on the version of you that struggled, thank them. They walked through darkness so you could live in light. They let themselves die so you could finally live. Honor them not with regret, but with gratitude. Because without that ending, you could never have known this kind of beginning. Sagittarius, your second chance isn't about rebuilding your old life. It's about embodying your new truth. Walk with calm pride. Speak with quiet power. Move with faith, not urgency. Let your life itself become the testimony. If this message resonated, if you recognize your own rebirth in these words, like, share and subscribe, not as routine but as ritual. Each time you do, you send energy into the world that says, I choose life. I choose purpose. I choose peace. Your resurrection wasn't a miracle that happened once. It is a miracle that continues every day you rise. You died in 2020, and you were reborn eternal.